Dawn had barely lifted the charcoal veil from the sky when a restless wind swept the wide plaza in front of Minato Central Station. Commuters poured from buses in dun-colored coats, heads bowed against sheets of drizzle that shivered beneath the neon timetable. Amid the scuffle of briefcases and umbrella tips, a Border Collie pup stayed rooted beside the automatic doors, as if the slick pavement were stitched to his paws. His mottled coat, once proud black and white, now hung in soaked tassels. Every droplet that fell from his fur left a lonely dark star on the concrete. Most people noticed him only long enough to wince. A middle-aged salaryman muttered that the dog must belong to someone inside. A teenage girl snapped a quick photo before sprinting for her train. Station guards exchanged weary glances, but kept their hands in their pockets. Lost animals were city services, not rail security. The pup, oblivious to the bureaucracy of blame, watched every pair of doors whoosh open with sudden, impossible hope. Each time a suitcase rolled through, his ears pricked, tail lifting in a wary half-wag before disappointment shoved it back down. He tried once to nose inside, but the blast of heater air and the clamor of footsteps pushed him out again, like an invisible tide. So he settled near the vending machines, curling tight against the stainless base plate, where a thin ribbon of warmth leaked from the building's boiler line. The air smelled of canned coffee, engine oil, lunchbox seaweed, and hurried dreams. Eyes half closed, the pup worked to memorize the scent of everyone who passed, weaving them into a single imagined person his heart insisted must arrive. Above him, the station clock chimed 6. Lights flickered in nearby office towers like distant lighthouses, promising daylight that felt too far away. The pup exhaled a shiver, rested his chin on damp paws, and waited. For warmth, for belonging, for someone who might finally see him, rather than the rain. He did not realize that, 2 blocks away, fate had already begun to turn its face toward him. Approaching slowly, Doctor. Adrien Fletcher crouched beside the shivering bundle of fur. He let his gloved hand hover before the puppy's nose, giving the little one a choice. A cautious sniff, a backward shuffle, then a wary gaze. No trust yet, but no bite either. Rainwater beaded on the pup's whiskers. Adrien felt it like needles in his own skin. Poor fellow, he whispered. You'll freeze out here. He glanced over his shoulder at the sliding doors of Ridgemont General. Inside, fluorescent corridors hummed with midnight emergencies. But out here the wind ruled, tearing posters from the bus shelter and rattling bike racks like brittle bones. An orderly swabbing the tiles shrugged when Adrien asked, "Does anyone know whose dog this is?" "He's been camping out since last Thursday, Doc," the man said, wringing his mop. "Security shoos him off, but he circles back every night." A week, Adrien thought. 7 brutal nights of sleet and salt. What keeps you tethered to this spot? Nurse Harriet emerged, balancing a tower of charts. "Dr. Fletcher, your trauma consult is waiting." Then she noticed the dog. Her expression softened. "He breaks my heart every shift." "Hospital rules won't let him inside," Adrien muttered, anger and helplessness tangling in his throat. "But abandoning him feels worse." Harriet tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Animal Services opens at 8. If we can keep him nearby until then." Adrien looked again at the pup, thin, trembling, yet stubbornly planted on the concrete, as though guarding an invisible door. "I'll run to the resident lounge," he said. "There's an old fleece blanket in my locker, maybe some chicken from the cafeteria." The pup's ears twitched at the word chicken, and his tail made a tentative half-sweep. Adrien allowed himself a small smile. "Stay put, little sentinel. I'm coming back." As he hurried through the automatic doors, warmth and hospital light closed around him. Behind the glass, The dog resumed his silent vigil, unaware that kindness, at last, was racing down the corridor in borrowed scrubs. Adrien burst back through the glass doors, clutching a blue fleece, a paper bowl of shredded rotisserie chicken, and a borrowed slip lead. The pup, still rooted beside the vending machines, lifted his head as the scent of warm meat drifted over the rain. "Dinner service," Adrien said, dropping to one knee. He laid the blanket first, letting it soak puddles, then offered a morsel. After a pause, the dog inched forward, teeth chattering from cold rather than anger, and took it with delicate precision. 2, 3, 4 bites later, a soft whine escaped, hunger mixed with fragile hope. Only now, with the fur on his neck parted, did Adrien spot the collar. Cracked leather, brass buckle, ring snapped where a tag once hung. Embedded grime had nearly erased the word Sora, yet the letters were clear enough to make the pup's ears flick when Adrien spoke them. "So that's your name, night watchman?" Footsteps splashed behind him. Remy, the security guard, folded his arms. "Doc, no animals past this line." "Ambulance bays outside policy," Adrien replied. "Give me till 8. Animal services will take him, or I'll drive him myself." Remy's brow furrowed, but the pup chose that moment to press a muzzle against Adrien's sleeve. The guard sighed. "Bay's dry. You clean the mess." Inside the bay, diesel fumes lingered from the last call, mingling with antiseptic and stale coffee. Adrien spread a towel beneath a space heater, turning the dial a notch, while Sora tracked every movement with solemn eyes, as though memorizing this newfound kindness. Adrien looped the slip lead and coaxed Sora toward the ramp. The dog hesitated, then followed, curling on the fleece beside the humming unit. Harriet appeared with a styrofoam cup of broth. "Your 4B patient's ready," she whispered. "I'll monitor. Go finish charts." Adrien glanced from Sora to the bright ER hallway and back. 30 minutes, he promised. Yet, as he stepped away, the dog scooted forward, leash taut, unwilling to lose him, bound now by something stronger than leather and luck. 28 minutes later, Adrien jogged back into the ambulance bay, tie half loosened, the ghost of a fresh suture note still clinging to his mind. Sora lifted his head instantly, tail thumping once, restrained joy, as though full happiness might scare the doctor away. "All right, partner," Adrien murmured, kneeling. "Let's get you properly checked." He ran practiced fingers along ribs that jutted like piano keys, felt the burr of an old scar beneath matted fur, and winced at a faint wheeze in every inhale. Malnourished, mild respiratory infection. Nothing a course of antibiotics and steady meals couldn't fight, he told himself. His pager buzzed again. Code blue, ortho ward. Hospital chaos never paused. Adrien frowned, then unclipped his ID lanyard and slid it over Sora's collar like a makeshift tag. "I will come back," he said, tapping the plastic against leather for emphasis. As he hurried toward the elevators, Sora shifted onto all fours, ready to give chase, but Harriet appeared, barring the way with gentle firmness. "Whoa there, Explorer. Doc's on call." She settled cross-legged beside him, reading vitals from her wristwatch. "Ever ridden in a car, Sora? You will soon." An ambulance backed into the bay, brakes hissing. The paramedics, Dom and Ray, noticed the scene. "We adopting mascots now?" Dom laughed, popping the rear doors. "Temporary," Harriet said. She asked if they could spare a thermal blanket. Ray draped one over Sora, who blinked at the sudden softness. "Warm smells like safety," his body seemed to decide. He exhaled and laid his head on Harriet's shoe. Through the open bay doors, the sky brightened, trading night's graphite for a reluctant pewter dawn. Shift change trickled in. Exhausted nurses, fresh interns juggling coffees, orderlies humming pop tunes off-key. Every new face earned Sora's hopeful stare, yet none matched the scent he guarded from the plaza. A scent now mingled with hand sanitizer and Adrien's peppermint gum. A siren wailed in the distance, fading west. Harriet stroked Sora's ears. "Hold tight, sweet boy. Morning's coming, and with it, maybe a miracle." The hospital's overhead lights finally blinked off at shift change, letting the softer amber of day lamps spill across the ambulance bay. At 7:45, a dented white van rattled up the ramp, its sides lettered ANIMALCARE in flaking teal. The driver, a compact woman in a rain slicker, climbed out with a clipboard and a telescoping catchpole. "Morning," Harriet called. "He's in the blanket." The woman, Officer Coe, squinted at Sora, then sighed. "Poor mite. Let's get him scanned and somewhere dry." She flicked the loop of the pole open. Metal rasped. Sora shrank, tail tucked. Adrien jogged in from the stairwell, still smelling of adrenaline and antiseptic. "Wait. Easy," he said, stepping between. "He trusts us. No pole." Officer Coe lifted a brow. "Doctor, policies for my safety." "Then let me load him," Adrien replied, palm steady on Sora's shoulder. The pup's hackles settled. He leaned against the scrubs like a living question mark. Coe considered, then produced a flat microchip scanner, the size of a TV remote. She passed it along Sora's spine. Beep. A number scrolled across the tiny screen. "Chip registered," she murmured. "Database sync is down till 9, but the office can pull records once we're back. Could be an address, maybe a phone." Adrien's heart lifted, then knotted. Owner found, meant goodbye. Yet the alternative, no one searching, felt crueler. "Please call me with anything you learn. Here's my card." He scribbled a cell number beneath his name. Coe eyed the ID lanyard dangling from Sora's collar. Looks like he already picked his doctor. Nevertheless, she clicked a soft nylon lead onto the collar, replacing the slip rope. Sora whimpered when Adrien started to hand the leash over. The sound cut deeper than any page. Harriet touched his elbow. "You could file as emergency foster," she whispered. "Keep him while the search runs." Adrien inhaled, rain clean air filling his lungs with resolve. "Officer, what paperwork would that take?" Coe smiled, a small surprised crescent. "A signature and a promise to answer your phone." Officer Coe spread a carbon paper form across the ambulance bay gurney. "Print, sign, date, ×4. Adrien gripped the pen, writing through copies that fluttered in the exhaust from a departing rig. By the last signature, his hands smelled of iodine and wet dog. Harriet fetched an old cat carrier from Lost and Found, its cracked plastic door refastened with gauze tape. She lined it with a folded pillowcase. "Until you get a real crate," she said. Sora sniffed the dark interior, wary. Adrien knelt. "Only for the ride, buddy." He placed a final chunk of chicken inside. Hunger overruled suspicion, and the pup crept forward. Door latched, deal sealed. Coe scanned Adrien's ID badge one more time for the file. "Chip lookup may take 24 hours, she warned. "If an owner steps up, you'll have 72 hours to surrender him. No questions. If not, you can file permanent adoption." Adrien imagined that empty brass ring on the collar, the way Sora's eyes searched for a face only he could smell. "Understood," he said, though the thought of losing the dog felt like suturing a wound only to reopen it. Rain had eased to a mist as he carried the carrier to his dusty hatchback. Inside, empty takeout cartons and medical journals slid aside to make space. Sora's ears flattened at the engine's first cough, but Adrien spoke softly, nonsense syllables, the rhythm of comfort, until the trembling eased. Traffic lights blinked amber along Riverfront Boulevard, barren at this dawn hour. When the car stopped at a red, Adrien reached through the grate. A damp nose met his fingertips, breathing a promise of fragile trust. Upstairs in his tiny apartment, he unscrewed a jar of peanut butter, smearing pills into a spoonful. Sora swallowed obediently, then circled the room, sniffing stethoscope, laundry, coffee grounds, piecing together the story of this new human. Finally, he curled beside an unplugged space heater and slept, chest rising easier than before. Adrien sank onto the couch, still in scrubs, watching the rhythm of that breath. Temporary, he reminded himself. Yet every beat of his own heart answered, "Please, let temporary become forever." The phone's alarm chirped at 10:40, jolting Adrien from the couch. He blinked at the unfamiliar quiet. No monitors, no intercoms, only the rhythmic tap-tap of paws exploring laminate floors. Sora emerged from the kitchenette with a wooden spatula, clamped like a trophy. "Kitchen raider, huh?" Adrien chuckled, trading the utensil for a squeaky duck procured during a dawn convenience store run. The swap delighted Sora. He paraded the toy in triumphant loops, tail-carving invisible figure eights. First task, Adrien decided, was a proper exam. He dialed Doctor. May Tan, a former residency classmate who had traded orthopedics for veterinary medicine, after admitting she preferred patients who didn't sue. "House call?" May laughed through the speaker. "You owe me coffee and gossip." Appointment set for noon. Adrien gathered towels, disinfectant, and a thrift shop dog bed still smelling of lavender sachets. Sora investigated every item, then settled on the bed with a sigh so satisfied it felt like gratitude incarnate. A buzz from the coffee table interrupted the calm. Officer Ko scrolled across the screen. Adrien's pulse kicked. "Tell me," he said before hello. "Microchip lookup finished," Ko replied. "Registry lists owner as Rina Okada, address 6 miles east. Contact number belongs to her mother. I left a message." Adrien scribbled the name on a prescription pad. "Any lost dog report?" "None filed. But I cross-checked hospital logs. There's a Rina Okada, 28, admitted 8 days ago after a traffic accident. She's in Riverside ICU. Your building." The room tilted. Sora, sensing a shift, padded over and nudged Adrien's knee. How many nights had this dog camped at the station, while his person lay 2 floors away? Ko continued, "If family confirms ownership, we'll arrange reunion once Ms. Okada's stable." "Thank you," Adrien murmured, voice thick. He hung up and stroked the collie's head. "Looks like you were guarding her path home, not waiting to be found." Sora licked his hand, eyes bright with unspoken recognition. Outside, city sirens wailed, a distant reminder that not every story ends, but some, mercifully, begin again. May Tan arrived precisely at noon, trench coat dripping, stethoscope in a candy-pink tote. She knelt to Sora's level and offered a palm seasoned with freeze-dried liver. "So you're the mystery hero." He accepted the treat, ears sweeping back in approval. Adrien briefed her on the chip match and the owner's critical status. May's face shifted from playful to clinical empathy. "Let's give him a head to tail. If Rina wakes, she'll want proof he's healthy." They transformed the living room rug into an exam mat. Temperature slightly elevated, heart strong but fast, lungs, crackles in the right field. Mild pneumonia. May injected antibiotics, then checked pause, noting road salt abrasions. Through every poke, Sora remained stoic, lifting his head toward Adrien, as though anchoring courage to that familiar scent. "All fixable," May concluded, scribbling meds on a pad. "Rest, nutrition, no marathon fetch sessions for a week." She paused. "You'll bring him to see her, won't you?" Adrien exhaled. "That's the plan, if infection control allows." He pictured the ICU's glass cubicles, beeping pumps, and Rina Okada somewhere among them, breathing through tubing while her dog braved storms to stand vigil. A text pinged from Officer Coe. Family reached. Rina's mother, eager for update. Can you meet outside ICU at 1600? May caught the flicker of nerves across Adrien's face. Whatever happens, she said, tapping Sora's collar, you've been his lighthouse. That won't disappear just because land comes into view. By 3:30, the hatchback rolled toward Riverside. Sora belted into the back seat with Adrien's hoodie as a comfort blanket. His nose pressed the window, tracing towers and traffic in silent excitement. When the hospital skyline appeared, he let out a single soft bark. Recognition, wrapped in relief. In the staff lot, Adrien clipped on a fresh bandana, printed with cartoon hearts. Hospital policy demanded an identifiable garment. Ready, Sentinel? He whispered. Sora answered by planting one paw on the console, gaze fixed on the elevators beyond the glass doors. Together they stepped into the drizzle, carrying hope like a torch toward the ward, where reunion or heartbreak awaited at the turn of a corridor. The ICU's security vestibule smelled of bleach and possibility. Officer Coe waited beside a frail woman in a quilted coat, clutching a paper cup with both hands. Dr. Fletcher. This is Mrs. Okada, Coe said softly. Rina's mother. Mrs. Okada's gaze fell to the collie, whose tail swept low across the polished floor. Sora, she breathed, syllables cracking open weeks of fear. She knelt, or rather folded, until her knees touched linoleum, cupping the dog's face. Sora answered with a whimper so wound tight it vibrated against her palms. Tears slipped past her mask. She did not wipe them. Adrien cleared his throat. Visitation rules forbid animals past the glass. But there's a family lounge adjoining Rina's room. We can open the divider curtains so she sees him. Coe procured a disposable gown for Adrien and a transparent dog-sized drape that resembled a rain poncho. Infection control improvisation. She winked. Sora tolerated the crinkly garment, though the Velcro under his belly prompted a theatrical sigh. Inside the lounge, fluorescent lights hummed. Chairs were bolted in cautious rows. Through the partition's observation window, Rina Okada lay motionless, brunette hair fanned across a pillow, ventilator tracing silent peaks on a monitor. A nurse adjusted IV tubing, then nodded at Adrien's request to widen the blinds. Mrs. Okada pressed her fingertips to the glass. Rina-chan, she whispered. Sora moved beside her, nose fogging the pain. For a heartbeat, nothing changed, and then Rina's eyelids fluttered. The nurse leaned in, startled, calling for a resident. But the only eyes Rina seemed to search were the canine pair staring faithfully through the window. Her hand twitched against the sheets, fingers curling as if grasping a leash remembered in dreams. Adrien's pulse thundered. He heard the resident declare, "Responsive stimulus," felt Mrs. Okada's shoulders quake with hope, and sensed Sora's body thrumming like a tuned wire. The ventilator continued its steadfast rhythm, but now every cycle sounded less like survival and more like return. Adrien knelt, placing a hand on Sora's back. "She sees you," he murmured, voice tipping into reverence. "Keep shining, Lighthouse." The resident hurried in, starting the neurocheck, light pen, sternal rub, simple commands. Rina's lids fluttered, then opened, pupils tracking. When asked, "Can you hear me?" she gave a slight nod. The monitor answered with a hopeful climb in heart rate. Outside the glass, Mrs. Okada covered her mouth, tears slipping between her fingers. Sora released a soft bark, quiet, yet strong enough that Rina's gaze drifted toward the sound. She locked on the collie in his crackling plastic apron. A tremor rippled down her arm. She lifted 2 fingers and traced a circle, Sora's favorite trick. Instinctively, the dog spun once, sat, ears pitched forward. Nurses on both sides of the window gasped. The charge nurse mouthed to Adrien, "Purposeful motion." He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding since the plaza. Rina tried to form words around the ventilator. Frustration creased her brow. Adrien grabbed a dry erase board, printed, "Your dog is safe. He's here." The nurse held the board where she could see. Tears welled, but her thumb floated upward, determination piercing sedation. Officer Coe, lingering in the doorway, murmured, "Therapy animal waiver might be possible. I'll push the paperwork." Adrien knelt to Sora. "Mission accomplished, Sentinel." The collie pressed his head to Adrien's chest. The ICU team allowed 5 minutes of quiet observation. Each tick of the wall clock felt monumental, measuring hope rather than time. When the blinds closed, Sora whined once, but Adrien scratched behind his ears. "She needs rest. We'll return tomorrow." Mrs. Okada turned, cheeks damp yet glowing. "Thank you for finding him," she whispered. Adrien shook his head. "Your daughter had the most loyal guardian in the city. I only offered a blanket." They walked to the elevators, Sora trotting between them, paws clicking on tile, stitching family and stranger into something quietly miraculous. Behind them, Officer Coe filled out the incident log, her usual clipped handwriting softened by a tiny doodle of a dog paw in the margin. A quiet reminder that even bureaucracy can wag its tail when mercy calls. Snowy flurries spiraled across the hospital courtyard when Adrien guided Sora toward the discharge lobby. Hours had slipped by while Rina stabilized, her vitals no longer dancing on the edge of alarms. Nurse Harriet had texted, "Vent settings coming down. Sedation holiday planned tonight." It felt like the moon had risen twice in one day. Inside the lobby, Christmas decorations, hung weeks early by overzealous volunteers, cast ruby and emerald light across the glass. A pine garland rustled as the automatic doors parted, and Sora's nose twitched at the mingled scents of spruce and hot cocoa from a charity stand. Mrs. Okada paused at the table, purchasing 3 steaming cups. She handed one to Adrien, her hands tremulous but warm. "I never believed in miracles," she said softly, "but my daughter woke because she recognized the sound of her dog's bark. How do I repay that?" Adrien shook his head. "You already did, by loving her enough to wait." They settled on a bench beneath a glowing paper star. Sora curled at their feet, head resting on Adrien's boot. Traffic pulsed beyond frosted windows, but here there was a hush, broken only by the elevator chime and distant carols echoing through the atrium. Mrs. Okada sipped cocoa, gaze drifting to the visitor's kiosk where a handwritten sign read, "Hope Tree, hang a wish." Tags fluttered, each bearing scrawled prayers and promises. She whispered, "Will you help me write one for Rina?" Adrien offered his pen. Together they penned, "May her strength return as steadfastly as Sora's devotion." Mrs. Okada tied it near the topmost branch, fingers grazing a sea of strangers' hopes, now intertwined with her own. His phone buzzed, Maytan checking on Sora's meds. Adrien sent a quick update, then crouched, smoothing the collie's ruff. "Home, Sentinel," he murmured. The dog lifted a paw onto his knee, nails tapping a soft rhythm, one human heartbeat echoed by 4 quiet ones. Outside, the flurries turned to steadier snow, blanketing the courtyard in white. Adrien realized the season's first storm felt less like cold and more like promise. A clean slate that for once arrived wrapped in fur and second chances. Night settled thick as velvet when Adrien parked outside his apartment. Snow sifted beneath street lamps, swirling like static in a silent television. Sora bounded up 2 flights, nails clacking a cheerful tattoo that echoed off cinderblock walls. Inside, Adrien spread a fresh blanket near the radiator and brewed chamomile, half for himself, half to scent the room with calm. But sleep proved elusive. Every time Adrien's eyes drifted closed, he saw Rina's fingers moving in slow circles, felt the fragile lift of her eyelids. At 2:07 a.m., his phone vibrated. Riverside ICU glowed on the screen. Heart pounding, he answered. "Dr. Fletcher, this is Nurse Ortega. Ms. Okada's breathing on her own. She's requesting her dog." Adrien was back in the hatchback within 10 minutes, Sora leashed and wearing the cartoon heart bandana. The snow had deepened, muffling the city's sharp angles. When they reached the hospital, Officer Coe met them with a triumphant wave of paperwork. Therapy waiver approved. 10-minute visit. Full PPEA nursing aides slipped tiny blue booties over Sora's paws, and a mesh vest, spritzed with veterinary disinfectant. He looked momentarily offended, then shook once. Ready. The ICU doors hissed open, releasing a hush punctuated by monitor beeps. Rina lay propped on pillows, tracheal collar venting warm mist. Her eyes widened as Sora trotted in, tail thrumming. "Hey, brave girl," Adrien murmured, guiding the collie to the bedside. Rina's lips moved. "Sora." Barely sound, yet clear. Tears shimmered. Mrs. Okada clasped a tissue to her mouth, shoulders trembling with relief. Sora placed both front paws on the mattress, allowed only because plastic covers shielded the sheet, and nudged Rina's hand until her fingers curled into wet fur. A sigh escaped them both, the kind that empties fear and fills the space with belonging. Adrien stepped back, throat tight, watching Sentinel meet Lighthouse Keeper at last. 10 minutes vanished in a blink, but the room felt forever altered, brighter, quieter, as though the machines themselves recognized reunion and adjusted their rhythms to match a steady, hopeful heart. Rina's room smelled less like antiseptic now, and more like peppermint hand cream, courtesy of volunteers who had swapped sterile wipes for a holiday basket. 2 days after the midnight reunion, sunlight angled through the blinds, painting slow stripes across the quilt on her lap. Adrien hovered beside the vitals monitor, while a respiratory therapist disconnected the humidifier hose. "Deep breath, Ms. Okada," the therapist coached. Rina inhaled without the machine's assist, chest trembling, yet steady. Her first unaided breath since the accident. Sora sat like a statue at the foot of the bed, wearing a laminated therapy visitor tag that dwarfed his collar. He wagged once for every benchmark achieved, tail metronoming encouragement. "Ready for the hallway challenge?" Adrien asked. Rina nodded, gripping walker rails. The crash cart parked nearby felt like overkill, yet progress in ICU came measured in careful inches. Adrien clipped a short lid to Sora, handing the loop to Rina. "He'll pace you. Step, exhale, step, inhale." The pair crossed the threshold, fourth pole squeaking, walker skimming tiles. Sora matched her cadence, nose occasionally nudging her calf when knees wobbled. Staff paused, charting to cheer. A teenage patient raised his phone to film, mouthing "cool dog." Halfway to the nurse's station, Rina stopped, sweat beading under her fringe, and lifted trembling fingers. Sora performed his signature spin, crowding out pain with a burst of laughter from everyone watching. Even ventilator alarms down the hall seemed to soften in response. Back in the room, Rina sank into the chair by the window. She scratched Sora's ruff and whispered, "Couldn't have done it without you, boy." Adrien pretended to review vitals while wiping a tear from his cheek. Outside, snowmelt dripped from the eaves, slow, deliberate drops marking the passage from crisis to recovery. Inside, 3 hearts synchronized, 1 canine, 1 patient, 1 doctor, all beating toward the same horizon. Tomorrow's goal, the lobby Christmas tree, and maybe a quiet chocolate donut for courage. Morning light draped the lobby's marble floor like spun gold, and holiday carols drifted from a volunteer quartet near the entrance. Rina, wrapped in a snow-white knit shawl, advanced inch by inch from the elevator, gripping her walker with one hand, Sora's leash with the other. Adrien and Nurse Ortega flanked her, pockets stuffed with extra oxygen tubing, just in case, though Rina insisted the portable tank felt more symbolic than necessary now. Ahead stood the towering Hope Tree, 15 feet of evergreen, laden with paper stars. It emitted a faint citrus and pine scent that blended with the cafe's fresh pastry aroma. Rina mouthed, "Chocolate donut," and Adrien nodded, already fishing bills from his coat. While he queued at the counter, Mrs. Okada joined her daughter, eyes shining. "Your wish tag is still up there," she whispered, pointing near the top. A maintenance worker offered to fetch it down, but Rina shook her head. "Leave it," she croaked softly. "Let someone else see what devotion looks like." She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a blank gold star. With shaky letters she wrote, "May every patient find a loyal friend to guide them home." Sora sat back on his haunches, tilting his head as though reading. Rina laughed, a raspy but genuine sound, then attached the tag at eye level, where passers-by couldn't miss it. Applause rippled from nearby visitors. Even the quartet paused mid-verse to smile. Adrien returned bearing a donut crowned with rainbow sprinkles. He tore off a tiny pinch, offering it to Rina. Then, ignoring Ortega's mock scowl, another to Sora, who accepted delicately. "Doctor's orders," Adrien declared. "One bite of victory sugar." They settled on the curved lobby bench, the tree's lights blinking above them. Snow had stopped outside. In its place, an almost imperceptible thaw glazed the sidewalks. Sora stretched out, head on Rina's foot, content. For the first time since the accident, Rina allowed herself to imagine beyond the hospital walls. A modest apartment, late-night walks, and a world where every sunrise carried the echo of paws against pavement, and the steady, reassuring cadence of her own breathing beside them. 3 weeks later, sunshine polished every window on Riverside's East Wing, the kind of crisp January light that makes even hospital linoleum glow. Discharge paperwork lay neatly stacked on Rina's bedside table, decorated with a bright green, cleared for home stamp. Adrien performed a final neurocheck, tapping her palms, testing reflexes. "Everything looks textbook," he said, then lowered his voice. "Textbook miracle anyway." Rina smiled, voice stronger now. "I'll settle for miracle." She glanced at Sora, who lounged like a furry sentry under the rolling suitcase Nurse Ortega had insisted on packing. Bandana freshly laundered, therapy tag retired to a keepsake box. He was officially just Sora, the good boy again. Mrs. Okada bustled in, waving a smartphone. "Moving company confirmed. Your apartment's elevator will be working by noon." Rina raised an eyebrow. "Mom, I live on the 3rd floor." Her mother winked. "And elevators spare your surgeon friend's back when he visits." Adrien flushed, pretending to review Sora's vaccine card. Officer Ko arrived next, carrying a slim folder. "Final chip transfer," she announced. "Ownership returns to Ms. Okada as soon as you sign." Rina accepted the pen, then paused. "There's room here for a secondary contact?" Ko nodded. Without meeting Adrien's eyes, Rina wrote his name and number. "In case of emergency or excessive donut cravings," she teased. Adrien's grin felt too wide for his face. Release hour approached. Ortega unhooked the last 4th port, replacing it with a cheerful bandage stamped, "Go live your story." Maytan popped in on her lunch break, presenting an oversized canister of hypoallergenic treats for respiratory-safe bribery. Finally, they wheeled toward the elevators. Staff lined the corridor, clapping gently, an impromptu guard of honor. Sora trotted ahead, leash slack, tail flagging like a victory banner. At the atrium doors, Rina halted, taking in the hope tree. Most paper stars had been cleared for the next season, but 2 tags remained: her mother's original wish and the gold star Rina hung herself. She looked at Adrien. "Let's leave them," she whispered. "Every patient needs proof that hope sticks around." Then, with Sora guiding one side and Adrien steadying the other, she stepped through the sliding glass into the bright, ordinary freedom of afternoon. Snowbanks still gleamed at the curbside when the taxi eased to a stop in front of Rina's apartment block, a squat red brick building with ivy, frozen in mid-climb. Mrs. Okada hurried ahead to hold the lobby door, but Sora insisted on entering first, nose sweeping a ceremonial arc as if blessing the threshold. The elevator behaved itself, rattling only once as they rose to the 3rd floor. Inside 3B, afternoon sun stretched across polished wood, illuminating the forgotten chaos left by a life interrupted. Half-folded laundry on the sofa, a novel splayed open at Chapter 9, takeout menus magneted to the fridge. Rina stood at the doorway, fingers curling against the walker handles, overcome by the simple fact of home. Adrien moved about quietly, opening windows for fresh air, setting a kettle to boil, while Sora executed an enthusiastic perimeter check, toenails ticking across every room. When he returned, he carried Rina's slipper in his mouth, tail helicoptering. She laughed, braced against the walker, and bent to accept the offering. "Back to fetching shoes, huh?" Her voice was steady, unburdened by hospital whispers. They held a tiny housewarming picnic on the living room rug. Miso soup in travel mugs, the remains of May's hypoallergenic treats, and 2 bakery donuts Adrien smuggled from the lobby cafe. Steam fogged the window panes, turning the outside world into a watercolor of traffic and twilight. Conversation wandered, from Rina's tentative plans to resume freelance photography, to Adrien's confession that he'd nearly flunked his first-year surgical knot-tying exam. Laughter anchored the room, weaving new memories through the spaces trauma once occupied. As dusk deepened, Mrs. Okada gathered her purse to catch the last bus home. She paused at the door, eyes glistening. "Call if you need anything," she said, "but I think you two, and one heroic pup, have everything you need." When the door clicked shut, Sora settled between Rina and Adrien, head on both their feet, as though stitching them permanently together. Outside, streetlights flicked on one by one, mapping a constellation only visible to those brave enough to start again. Night gathered at the window like dark silk, but inside 3B, a gentle glow spilled from a single floor lamp, warm enough to soften every shadow. Adrien stacked soup mugs in the sink, while Rina adjusted pillows on the couch, her temporary bed, until stairs felt less daunting. Sora paced between them, ears swiveling, as though supervising a closing shift at the cafe of their new life. When the last dish clinked dry, Adrien checked his watch. "I should head out. Rounds start early." The words tasted bittersweet. Rina's smile faltered, then steadied. "Thank you. For every blanket, every chicken scrap, and for not giving up." He shrugged, feigning casual bravery. "You and Sora made it easy to believe." He crouched, scratching beneath the collie's chin. "Guard her." Sora licked his knuckles, silent oath sealed. At the door, Adrien hesitated. Snowflakes caught in the hallway light, drifting past the stairwell window. He handed Rina a small envelope. "Emergency numbers, plus a gift card for the corner market. They make terrible coffee, but the cashier tells great jokes." She slipped it into her hoodie pocket, eyes bright. When the latch clicked behind him, quiet settled, a peace both comforting and unfamiliar. Rina exhaled, feeling the apartment expand to fit her heartbeat. She shuffled to the bookshelf, retrieving her camera, untouched since the accident. The strap felt foreign against her palm, yet familiar, like a childhood melody. She knelt beside Sora, framing a shot of him sprawled on the rug, toy duck between paws. The shutter snapped, Sora's ears perked, tail thumping. Rina reviewed the image, grainy, low light, imperfect. Perfect, she whispered, first photo of the new chapter. In the silence that followed, radiator pipes hummed a lullaby. Rina dimmed the lamp, sank onto the couch, and beckoned. Sora jumped up gently, curling against her side. His rhythmic breathing synchronized with the ticking wall clock, marking time not as something lost, but something finally, wholeheartedly, resumed. Dawn slipped past the curtains in silvery bands, stirring Sora first. He stretched with a theatrical groan, then nuzzled Rina's cheek until her eyes flickered open. Outside, a postal van rattled over frozen potholes. Life's ordinary soundtrack, returning at last. Rina swung her legs off the couch, testing balance without the walker. 3 cautious steps to the kitchen, guided by Sora's shepherding shoulder, felt like conquering Everest. She rewarded them both with toast. Plain for her, crust for him, before settling at the table beneath the bulletin board still pinned with pre-accident reminders. She tore down expired bills, replacing them with a single index card. Today, 1 photo, 1 breath of fresh air. After medication and a careful change into fleece joggers, she clipped on Sora's leash. The hallway smelled of laundry detergent and someone's too early curry. They descended slowly, Rina gripping the rail, Sora matching her pace like a living metronome. Parquet lobby floors welcomed her footprints for the first time in months. Outside, pale sun shimmered on brittle snowbanks. Rina inhaled crisp air that stung, yet thrilled her lungs. Across the street, a tiny park sat empty, except for pigeons and a retired man scattering seed. She crossed, camera in hand, heart drumming. Sora bounded ahead, then circled back, constant radius of protection. Rina raised the lens, framing morning light spilling over icy branches. Click. Another of Sora mid-leap, toy duck in jaws. Click, click. Each shutter sound was a heartbeat spelled aloud. A familiar voice called her name. Adrien jogged up, hospital badge glinting. Early rounds ended on time for once. He grinned, holding 2 thermoses. He offered the weaker coffee to Rina, keeping the sludge for himself. They strolled the perimeter path, slow, deliberate loops. Adrien recounted a resident's disastrous attempt at latte art in the break room. Rina shared plans for a photo series on resilience. At every laugh, Sora wagged approval. Back at the stoop, Adrien hesitated. Gallery opening in 2 months, Rina teased. I'll need a medical consultant for the artist's statement. He bowed with mock solemnity. On call. Sora herded them inside, tail sweeping cold air away, ushering the ordinary miracle of day 2, morning light. 6 days later crept into apartment 3B to find its occupants in routine harmony. Sora pacing figure 8s between sofa and door, Rina practicing leg lifts beside the coffee table, and Adrien crashed on the recliner after a brutal shift, murmuring mnemonics in his sleep. A tremor in Rina's quad signaled fatigue. She exhaled, lowering her foot. Break time. Adrien muttered, half dreaming, then blinked awake. He poured electrolyte mix into tumblers, adding a biscuit for Sora. Today was Rina's first outpatient checkup. She chose jeans instead of sweats, mascara instead of hospital pallor. Adrien pretended not to notice her hands shaking while buttoning denim. Sora did notice and pressed a steadying head against her knee. At Metro Rehab, fluorescent corridors smelled of disinfectant and eucalyptus liniment. Physical therapist Jonah greeted them with stadium announcer cheer. Our comeback queen returns. He strapped sensors to Rina's calves. Motion capture cameras blinked overhead. The treadmill's slow belt felt hostile. Memories of traction splints flashed like static. Rina's breath hitched, but Adrien tapped the glass, mouthing, "You've got this." Sora, barred from the equipment zone, sat flawlessly still, eyes tracking every step. 2 minutes became 5. Speed dial edged upward, Jonah's stopwatch ticking a symphony. Sweat beaded at Rina's temples, yet her grin widened. When the belt finally stopped, she threw both arms up, sensor wires flailing like streamers. The rehab team applauded. A passing patient, fist bumped the air. Jonah compared baseline charts to today's printout. "You're months ahead of projection," he marveled. Rina wiped her brow. "Blame the home coach." She pointed at Sora, who barked once, modest acknowledgement. Outside, sunlight felt warmer than forecast. Rina leaned on the walker only for the ramp, then folded it, stowing it in the back seat herself. On the drive home, they detoured along Riverside Boulevard. Windows cracked so crisp, air ruffled Sora's fur. Billie Holiday sliding from Adrien's phone. Every note sounding like permission to dream bigger. Adrien watched her in the mirror, pride swelling like thawing river ice. The long road back was still winding, but today they'd carved another bright mile. A late February dusk painted the city lavender when Rina pushed through the glass doors of Gallery Memento, heart drumming in 6/8 time. The space smelled of fresh plaster and citrus polish. Spotlights still dangled loose wires, awaiting final focus. Milo Kim, the curator whose emails were equal parts poetry and exclamation marks, bounded over, clipboard flapping. "You're early, which is perfect," he chirped, guiding her past blank walls, labeled with blue painter's tape. "We're mapping the show." At his heels padded Sora, sporting a satin ribbon that read, "Assistant Curator," after Milo discovered therapy dogs attract sponsorships. Adrien trailed behind, lugging a crate of framed prints. They arranged the pieces in sequence. Vigil. Sora waiting beneath neon rain. Threshold. Rina's first step outside the hospital. Skyline lungs. An aerial dusk shot Rina captured from Adrien's borrowed roof access. Each photo carried a handwritten caption about resilience, and beneath every caption Milo insisted on a tiny QR code linking to the local organ donor registry. "Art must nudge the universe," he declared, snapping bubble wrap. Halfway through placement, Rina's leg trembled. Adrien produced a folding stool from nowhere, like a magician revealing silk scarves. She sat, embarrassed. "Still building endurance," she muttered. "Still saving miracles for opening night," he countered, offering water. While Milo negotiated track lighting angles with the electrician, a small crowd formed. A pair of nursing students who recognized Sora from viral ICU footage, an elderly gentleman who taught photography at the community center, and May Tan clutching a bakery box labeled "Entirely Fruit, Totally Dog Safe." Laughter filled the half-finished gallery, echoing off concrete floors that would soon host strangers' footsteps, and maybe, Rina hoped, spark their own recoveries. As the final spotlight snapped on, bathing Vigil in soft gold, Milo clasped his hands. First light test, flawless. Rina exhaled, shoulders loosening. Sora pressed against her calf, gaze steady, as if reminding her she'd once been a lighthouse and could be one again. They stepped back together, surveying blank spaces yet to fill, with photos, with visitors, with stories still unfolding beyond the lens. Opening night arrived, draped in brisk March air, and a buzz that hummed down the block, like distant strings tuning. Gallery Memento's facade glowed, letters reading, "Lighthouse, a journey of return," projected onto the sidewalk, so every passing shoe stepped briefly through hope. Inside, spotlights now stood sentinel, each beam cradling a photograph, Soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers. Trays of sparkling cider winked beneath fairy light garlands. Rina paused just past the threshold. Cane traded for a slim oak walking stick carved by Jonah in physical therapy class. Sora trotted ahead. No ribbon tonight, only a simple collar etched with guide and guardian. Milo greeted them in a plum velvet jacket, cheeks already flushed with triumph. Press is here. Donors are circling. The QR codes have generated 26 signups. Before the doors even opened, he whispered, eyes shining. Adrien arrived seconds later, still in scrubs, hair wind-tossed from a sprint across 6 city blocks. He offered a single white carnation. For luck, he said, slightly breathless. Rina tucked it behind a gallery label that read, Threshold. Right where luck started, she teased. Guests trickled, then streamed. A high school art class clustered around Skyline Lungs, debating shutter speed. Mrs. Okada guided 2 ICU nurses to vigil, recounting Sora's rain-soaked stand outside the station with newfound theatrical flair. May distributed fruit biscuits to children, kneeling for nose boops. Near the center wall hung a last-minute addition. Pulse, an iPhone still of Adrien asleep in the recliner. Sora curled at his feet, IV pump and textbooks framing them in quiet chaos. Rina watched Adrien notice it, watched the flush rise in his cheeks. He turned, finding her gaze, and offered a tiny, earnest nod, as if to say yes. That moment counted too. Milo tapped a crystal glass. Murmurs softened. Tonight, he declared, we celebrate the alchemy of devotion, how a heartbeat, a shutter click, and 4 steadfast paws can bend darkness toward dawn. Applause rose, cameras flashed, and Rina felt the room expand until even her deepest inhale could not quite contain it. Sora nudged her calf, steadying, anchoring, reminding her that spotlights were simply brighter versions of morning light, and she had already walked through plenty of those. An hour after Milo's toast, the gallery had swollen into a river of conversation. Rina floated from cluster to cluster, leaning on her oak stick, answering questions about focal lengths and recovery timelines, while Sora navigated at her side like a courteous tugboat, guiding ships through a harbor of gowns and blazers. Near the refreshments, a local news anchor, hair sprayed into battlefield readiness, spotted them. A quick interview for Channel 7? She asked, mic at the ready. Rina's pulse skipped, but Sora pressed a reassuring shoulder against her calf, and Adrien materialized with 2 flutes of cider, passing one to Rina as if it were a shield. The camera's red light blinked on. Anchor. Your exhibit is titled Lighthouse. What do you hope visitors carry into the night? Rina. That even in storms, someone, or some dog, can be a beacon. You just have to look for the light. Sora punctuated the thought with a tail thump. The cameraman grinned behind the lens. Applause fluttered from a corner, where Milo unveiled the silent auction table. Prints had been mounted on reclaimed driftwood and propped beside sealed bid envelopes. A hush fell as the curator read the highest entry for Vigil. $10,000 from an anonymous donor, proceeds earmarked for the hospital's therapy animal fund. Adrien exhaled a soft whistle. Rina's eyes glossed, reflecting spotlights like tiny crescent moons. Suddenly, the gallery lights dimmed, planned blackout for a projection segment, but Rina's knees still wobbled. Adrien's hand found her waist. Sora's leash tightened barely an inch. On the far wall, a time-lapse of dawn over the city flared to life, each frame synced to the slow beat of a heart monitor. Visitors fell silent, breaths aligning with the rising sun on screen. Rina felt her own heartbeat echo the rhythm, steady and certain. She leaned toward Adrien, whispering, "Remember when morning felt impossible?" He squeezed her hand. "Now it's our favorite encore." As the final frame glowed bright gold, The lights rose again. Conversations resumed, bids rustled, and Rina realized the projection wasn't the night's climax. The true masterpiece was happening in real time. Strangers meeting hope, and hope meeting them back, guided, as always, by 4 quiet paws and an unwavering lens. The gallery's afterglow trailed Rina all the way home, a hum that stayed beneath her ribs like background music. She set Sora's leash on its hook and slotted the oak walking stick beside the door. No longer a crutch, now a trophy. Adrien followed with leftover cider and a rolled-up poster of Vigil, signed by every ICU nurse. Morning brought proof the night hadn't been a dream. Milo's ecstatic voicemail about 3 additional print sales, a bouquet of sunflowers from Jonah, PT proud, scrawled on the card, and an email stamped confidential in the subject line. Rina clicked. The anonymous donor had revealed herself, a venture philanthropist funding animal-assisted patient care. She invited Rina and Sora to help design the program. Therapy dog ambassadors, Adrien mused over pancakes. I can see you two in matching jackets. Rina laughed, drizzling syrup. Only if yours says honorary hound. They celebrated with a walk along the riverfront. Snow had melted into glistening puddles. Joggers dodged them like children playing hopscotch. Rina raised her camera, catching sunlight prisming through a dog's splash, then pivoted to frame Adrien mid-laugh, as Sora shook water all over his scrubs. Click. Another heartbeat stored in pixels. On a bench overlooking the thawing water, they drafted ideas. Bedside visits for long-term patients, a pause and pause corner in the rehab gym, photo workshops for teens using therapy dogs as models. Sora sprawled between them, belly up to the sky, 4 paws sticking into chilly air like exclamation marks of approval. Rina glanced at Adrien's scribbles, messy arrows, circled hearts around the word hope. She touched the back of his hand. We keep weaving new lighthouses, don't we? He flipped the page and wrote yes in bold marker strokes, then drew a paw print beside it. As afternoon light slanted gold, Sora rolled upright and nudged them both toward home. Time for meds, for editing photos, for whatever chapter waited just past the horizon. And so they stood, lacing fingers over the leash handle, stepping forward together, while the river whispered promises of spring. 3 weeks later, the Paws and Paws pilot launched in a bright conference room overlooking the rehab gardens. Folding chairs held administrators, therapists, and 2 skeptical accountants. The scent of institutional coffee mingled with fresh tennis balls Sora had located under a supply cabinet. Rina adjusted the projector, while Adrien distributed agendas stamped with a paw print watermark, Milo's design flourish. Thank you for gathering, Rina began, voice steady. We're here to prove compassion can be quantified. Slide 1. Statistics on lowered cortisol in patients visited by therapy animals. Slide 2. Projected savings on sedatives and counseling hours. The accountants perked up. Then Rina dimmed the lights. A short film rolled, clips of Sora guiding her first hallway steps, a pediatric burn patient giggling as Sora balanced a treat on his nose, an elderly stroke survivor practicing hand grip by brushing the collie's fur. The room fell silent except for the soft sniffle of a finance VP, visibly moved, despite himself. When lights rose, Adrien led Sora to the center. Live demonstration, he announced. Nurse Harriet wheeled in Mr. Alvarez, a cantankerous heart patient who'd refused physio all week. At the sight of the dog, Alvarez's scowl cracked. Sora offered a paw. Alvarez grudgingly shook it, twice. Harriet handed over a stress ball. Encouraged, Alvarez squeezed while stroking Sora's ears, unaware he'd completed his prescribed hand exercise. Applause bubbled. Even the accountants clapped. The hospital COO cleared her throat. This program has heart and data. She signed the approval sheet with a flourish, effective immediately. Rina exhaled, knees nearly giving. Adrien steadied her elbow, whispering, "Miracle number. I've lost count." Afterward, in the courtyard, Rina knelt to hug Sora. "Chief Therapy Officer," she declared, clipping a custom blue vest around his chest. Sora wagged so hard the vest spun sideways, prompting laughter from passers-by. Rina opened her planner, scribbling the next steps: recruit volunteers, schedule staff training, design photo badges for each dog handler team. Beside the list, she drew a tiny lighthouse and a single word: forward. Sunlight warmed the budding branches overhead, and for the first time in months, the future felt not just possible, but spacious. Wide enough to hold every wag, every shutter click, and every patient still searching for their own beacon. The inaugural Pause and Pause session dawned on a Saturday, washed in apple blossom light. Rina arrived early, camera strapped, heart tap dancing in her chest. The rehab gym, once echoing only with grunts and alarms, had been transformed by papier-mâché paw prints, beanbag seating, and a banner reading, "Sit, Stay, Heal." Volunteers filed in: 2 golden retrievers, a stately greyhound, and a one-eyed terrier with the swagger of a pirate. Each wore a photo badge Milo had printed overnight, their humans matching in teal shirts. Adrien wheeled in a cart of sensory toys: knobby massage balls, lavender-scented putty, squeakers for canine motivation. Sora trotted beside him, vest properly aligned this time, tail making slow, confident arcs. "Showtime, Chief," Adrien murmured. Sora answered with a soft woof that echoed like a starter pistol. First came the pediatric wing. 8 children, IV poles trailing glitter streamers, shuffled in with wide eyes. Rina knelt to their level. "Want to meet some furry coaches?" Giggles erupted. Sticker sheets flew. Sora executed his spin. The golden duo performed synchronized high fives, and the terrier demonstrated a comically exaggerated wink. Little Maya, marrow transplant pale and silent for days, reached out to stroke Sora's neck. Her monitor rate eased. A nurse mouthed, "Thank you," behind misted glasses. Next, physical therapy patients shuffled to stations where dogs acted as moving targets. Touch the retriever's nose, toss a soft ring for the greyhound, brush the terrier's coat to strengthen fine motor control. Numbers ticked upward on activity trackers. Laughter replaced reluctant groans. Rina floated through, snapping candids, concentration furrowing an elderly stroke survivor's brow as he looped a ring, pure wonder on a teenager's face when the greyhound bowed. Each click sealed a pocket of triumph. Mid-session, Jonah burst in, waving graphs from wearable sensors: blood pressure dips, oxygen spikes, serotonin surges. Accountants would drool. Rina high-fived him with the hand not holding her camera, then caught Adrien's gaze across the room. Pride shimmered there. An unspoken told you we'd light more beacons. When the final paw print stamped a child's progress card, applause filled the gym like sunrise in surround sound. Sora sat, head high, as if absorbing every watt of hope to guide them into the next bright mile. 2 months later, the Pause and Pause ripple reached City Hall. Hardwood chambers that usually echoed with zoning disputes, filled with an unusual perfume of dog shampoo and anticipation. Council member Ortega, Harriet's cousin, as fate would have it, had placed an item on the agenda: Resolution 2217, expansion of therapy animal services across municipal hospitals. Rina sat in the front row beside Adrien, oak walking stick folded at her feet, more keepsake than necessity. Sora sprawled calmly across her sneakers, sporting a navy bow tie. Behind them, therapy dog teams waited like a living slideshow. Labradoodles, a dignified rescue cat wearing a harness, even the terrier pirate, flashing his trademark wink at photographers. The session opened with economic projections, but charts failed to compete with the live demonstration. Rina rose when called, camera dangling, palms dry with practiced calm. "We can quantify lowered readmission rates," she said, clicking to a slide of bar graphs. "But let me introduce Exhibit A." She gestured to the aisle. At a whisper from Adrien, Sora trotted forward, presenting a clipboard to the council president. Laughter broke procedural stiffness. Applause followed unbidden. Behind her, Mr. Alvarez, now a volunteer, took the podium. He recounted how stroking Sora's ears became the hinge of his recovery. His gravelly voice wavered, but his grip on the microphone was iron steady. "These animals turned my stubborn heart into a team player," he concluded, blinking back tears. Questions dissolved into compliments. The vote passed unanimously. Ortega declared, "Hope is officially on the city budget." Cheers erupted. The pirate terrier barked twice, dutifully recorded in the minutes. Outside on the marble steps, sunlight spilled like fresh paint. Reporters swarmed, yet Rina's gaze fixed on Adrien, whose grin outshone every camera flash. "So," he said, producing a modest ring engraved with a tiny lighthouse and paw print, "want to keep building beacons, together, for good?" Words jammed in Rina's throat, but Sora solved the pause, planting a paw atop Adrien's shoe as if seconding the motion. Rina laughed, eyes sparkling, and simply whispered, "Yes." Applause from friends and strangers alike rippled down the steps, mingling with the distant city siren that now sounded less like alarm and more like invitation. The call to keep guiding lost souls home, one bark, one lens flare, one heartbeat at a time. Spring unfolded fast, scattering cherry petals across everything that dared stand still, including the tiny gold ring now glinting on Rina's finger. News outlets dubbed the proposal City Hall's happiest footnote. But for Rina and Adrien, the moment existed outside headlines, sealed somewhere between Sora's triumphant bark and the warm bruise of sunlight on old marble. They celebrated exactly as expected, with an impromptu picnic on the hospital roof garden. Permission granted by an orderly who owed Adrien a favor. Blankets spread beneath trellised wisteria. They unpacked deli sandwiches, iced tea, and a bakery box filled with bone-shaped cookies for Sora. Above them, elevator shafts hummed, but the city clamor felt miles away. "Wedding?" Adrien ventured, balancing turkey on rye. "Something small?" "Smaller than a therapy animal roll call?" Rina teased, gesturing to Sora, who lounged nearby, vest swapped for a dapper floral bandana. She considered the skyline, camera poised in her lap. What if we invite every patient who crossed paths with pause and pause? Adrien's brow arched. "That's half the rehab ward." "Exactly." Rina clicked a photo of his stunned grin. "Hope is contagious. Why quarantine it?" They drafted a plan on takeout napkins. Venue: the rehab courtyard where the first pilot session bloomed. Decor: string lights borrowed from Gallery Memento. Officiant: council member Ortega, who had already declared himself an ordained online minister for civic flexibility. Therapy animals would form the aisle guard, golden retrievers with satin sashes, the pirate terrier bearing rings in a tiny chest, and Sora, leading as best dog, lighthouse emblem stitched onto a velvet bow tie. Evening shadows stretched, painting wisteria petals indigo. Rina raised her camera, capturing Adrien gazing at the skyline, their next blank canvas. "Every click a promise," she murmured. Adrien reached over, pressing his fingertip to the shutter, sealing the frame together. Below, Ambulance sirens spiraled through traffic, but up here they sounded like distant gulls over water. Rina closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the city sync with her pulse. When she opened them, Adrien and Sora were silhouetted against the saffron sky, two beacons guiding her homeward, toward vows whispered under star-strung branches and a future stitched with paw prints and light. 6 weeks spun past in a bright whirl of emails, fittings, and leash rehearsals. The rehab courtyard, once a plain rectangle of concrete planters, now resembled a twilight meadow. Wildflowers in recycled IV bottles, fairy lights strung between portable infusion poles, and a chalkboard reading, "Love heals faster than morphine." Volunteers draped satin sashes over every therapy animal. The pirate terrier practiced his ring-bearer trot, chest puffed like a clipper ship. On the morning of the wedding, dawn unfurled in watercolor pinks. Rina, standing in her apartment's sunlit doorway, smoothed the front of her tea-length dress, a soft ivory number chosen for easy movement and hidden pockets. Inside one pocket, a vintage lens cap for luck. Inside the other, Sora's first therapy vest patch, edges frayed with miles of hope. Sora circled her once, nose nudging her calf, as if to say perfect alignment achieved. At the hospital entrance, transport orderlies wheeled grateful patients into rows. Alvarez in a blazer over his gown, Maya waving a flower wand taped to her IV pole, Jonah's PT crew forming an unofficial drumline with resistance bands. Adrien emerged from the elevator in a charcoal suit, lighthouse and paw cufflinks glinting. His eyes found Rina's across the courtyard. The crowd's murmur softened to a single collective inhale. Council member Efficient Ortega cleared his throat, script in hand. Therapy animals took position, retrievers anchoring aisles, the dignified rescue cat perched atop a rolling stool like a furry chaperone. As the first chords of a cello quartet drifted, Sora stepped forward, leading Rina down the flower-lined path. Every paw print landed in chalk hearts. Every step of Rina's own marked the triumph of muscle and will. Vows unfolded beneath the string lights, promises to chase dawns together, to shelter strays, human and canine alike, and to keep building lighthouses wherever shadows gathered. When Ortega pronounced them partners in life and luminous mischief, the pirate terrier trotted forth with the rings. Sora barked an amen. Applause erupted, mingling with joyful howls from the retrievers. Confetti cannons disguised as oxygen canisters puffed biodegradable petals skyward. Amid the fluttering bloom of color, Rina snapped a final photo. Adrien laughing, Sora mid-leap, petals suspended like stars. Forever proof that love, like light, travels fastest when carried on 4 paws and 2 intertwined hands. Week 1 of married life began, not with a honeymoon flight, but with dawn roll call in the hospital atrium, because therapy animals don't do sabbaticals. Rina and Adrien arrived hand in hand to find Milo taping fresh posters for Paws and Paws, Family Edition. The new initiative paired discharged patients with volunteer teams for at-home recovery visits, and today's kickoff doubled as a reunion picnic. Tables brimmed with fruit kebabs, gluten-free cupcakes shaped like hydrants, and a towering pup cake sculpted from rice cakes and peanut butter. Sora, bow tie traded for a jaunty bandana reading "Best Dog Ever, Official," performed greeting spins for returning alumni. Maya now walking brace-free, Mr. Alvarez brandishing a trumpet he'd promised to relearn, and a teen cancer survivor sporting turquoise streaks that matched the therapy program logo. Rina roamed with camera, capturing before and after hugs. Her lens found Adrien kneeling by a toddler who'd once feared doctors. Together they examined a stethoscope as if it were treasure. Click. Hope archived. Meanwhile, the pirate terrier, fresh eye patch embroidered with tiny rings, guarded the dessert table, growling theatrically whenever someone reached for seconds. Mid-morning, Council Member Ortega clinked a juice glass. "Big news," he announced. "The city greenlit funding to replicate PAWS, and PAWS in 2 neighboring hospitals, plus a mobile unit retrofitted from an old book bus." A slide popped up on a portable screen. A painted van, with Sora's silhouette leading a trail of paw prints, under the slogan, "Healing has 4 legs." Cheers erupted. A golden retriever howled appreciatively on the last note. Adrien slipped an arm around Rina's waist. "Mobile lighthouse," he murmured. "Lighting roads, not just rooms." Rina nodded, eyes bright. "And collecting stories mile by mile." As sunlight shifted, casting mosaics through atrium skylights, Sora trotted to the stage, placing 2 paws on the step. Rina followed, raising her camera high to capture the crowd. Patients, volunteers, pets, and staff, woven into a single tapestry of second chances. "You're all part of this photograph," she said, voice carrying. "Every heartbeat in here helped build the beam that guides the next traveler home." The shutter snapped. In that instant, applause, barks, and laughter merged into one great note, buzzing through marble and glass, a resonance promising to echo far beyond city limits, wherever a van's headlights carved new paths through the dark. 3 months later, the refurbished book bus, now christened the Beacon Van, rolled out of the city garage at sunrise, its fresh teal paint gleaming beneath decals of lighthouses and paw prints. Rina rode shotgun, window down, camera braced against the frame. Adrien drove, humming off-key to an old soul playlist. In the aisle behind them, Sora sprawled on a cushioned bench, flanked by crates of plush toys, first aid kits, and laminated therapy passports for each volunteer animal. The pirate terrier lounged atop a stack of folded agility tunnels, eye patch swapped for aviator goggles. Their maiden route traced the river to Willow Glen, a rural clinic understaffed since winter storms isolated the community. News of the Beacon's arrival had spread via hand-drawn flyers. As the van turned onto Main Street, children lined the sidewalk waving homemade flags stitched with paw prints. Sora pressed his nose to the glass, tail thumping like a metronome. Inside the clinic's modest gym, volunteers set up stations, brushing for fine motor rehab, scent trail games to encourage mobility, and a confidence course of low hurdles for both kids and canines. Rina clicked rapid-fire photos, a shy boy coaxing the greyhound through a hoop, a stroke survivor laughing as the golden retriever balanced a beanbag on her head. Adrien manned the vitals booth, swapping blood pressure cuffs for squeak toys when nerves flared. Mid-session, a power flicker dimmed overhead lights. Anxiety rippled through the crowd until the Beacon's onboard generator kicked in, humming a steady counterpoint. Fairy lights strung along the agility course glowed to life. Sora, sensing tension, performed his signature spin, drawing cheers. Rina captured the moment, hope literally lighting the room, and felt the old thrill pulse through her shutter finger. When the last patient received a paw print progress sticker, the mayor presented Rina and Adrien with a jar of local honey, for journeys sweet and sore throats soothed. Loading the van, Adrien whispered, "1 town down, a map full to go." Rina snapped a final shot. Sunset reflecting on the Beacon's windshield, Sora's silhouette framed in gold. As the van rumbled toward the horizon, headlights carved twin beams across twilight roads, portable lighthouses guided by 4 paws, 2 steady hands, and a camera still hungry for every spark of revived possibility. 5 towns and 1,000 paw print stickers later, the Beacon van coasted into Misty Hollow, an old mining settlement folded between fog-swaddled hills. The clinic here was a weather-beaten bungalow with flickering signage that read, "Community Health Stop," in letters missing paint and hope. Rina tightened her scarf as sea-scented mist licked the windshield. "Feels like a place that's forgotten how sunrise looks," she murmured. Inside, they found a skeleton staff. Nurse Calhoun, silver-braided hair and eyes sharp as frost, and a single physician juggling charts like playing cards. "Half our patients can't manage the stairs anymore," Calhoun sighed, nodding toward a creaking wooden ramp out back. "Morale's thinner than soup." Adrien unpacked portable ramps and non-slip mats, transforming the entrance in minutes. Meanwhile, Rina and Sora ventured to the adjoining senior living cottages, each door frame adorned with rusted wind chimes. Rina introduced herself, camera slung like a friendly promise. Sora carried a basket of lavender-filled beanbags, aromatherapy and grip trainers disguised as gifts. They met Mr. O'Donnell, a retired miner whose hands shook too fiercely for chess pieces. Sora placed a beanbag gently in his palm. The tremor steadied as he squeezed, eyes widening with a child's wonder. Next cottage, Miss Vega, once a ballroom dancer, refused walkers on principle. Rina coaxed her onto the beacon's traveling dance mat, taped arrows and paw prints marking simple steps. With the greyhound leading, Miss Vega shuffled, then glided, mistaking memory for present tense. Tears and laughter braided in each breath. Word spread like kettle steam. By afternoon, the clinic overflowed. Children from a nearby school arrived with handmade thank you cards, taping them to the beacon's side panels until teal vanished under crayon sunsets and stick-figure dogs. Nurse Calhoun leaned against the doorframe, misty gaze reflecting fairy lights strung along the porch. "It's been years since these walls heard this much laughter," she whispered. That evening, fog lifted enough to reveal a pale crescent moon. Rina captured its reflection in the clinic's window. Moon, lights, and Sora's silhouette merged, an accidental emblem of guidance reclaimed. As the beacon van rolled away, tire tracks carved twin silver ribbons through damp gravel, leaving behind ramps, beanbags, and a community humming with freshly kindled dawn. 3 days later, the beacon van rumbled south along Timber Ridge Pass, radio crackling with storm warnings. Clouds stacked like gray anvils. Sleet pecked the windshield. Adrien slowed to a crawl. "Last thing we need is the van skating off the map," he muttered, knuckles whitening on the wheel. Rina studied the GPS. Nearest shelter's Briarwood High, 3 miles. She checked the back. Sora and the pirate terrier snoozed beneath fleece blankets, oblivious to icy pinging. We detour and ride it out. Briarwood's gym glowed like a lantern in the blizzard. Principal Duarte greeted them at the loading dock, coat dusted with frost. "We've got stranded commuters and half the basketball team camped inside," he explained. "Morale's plummeting faster than the barometer." Challenge accepted. Volunteers unpacked agility tunnels, folding mats, and crates of squeaky snowman toys. Within minutes, the echoing gym transformed into a pop-up refuge of warmth and wagging tails. Rina stationed herself beneath a bleacher archway, snapping photos as therapy animals threaded between sleeping bags, distributing comfort like ambulatory fireplaces. One elderly traveler, Mrs. Neal, clutched a knitting bag, but couldn't feel her fingers for the cold. Sora settled beside her, lending body heat, while Rina fetched a cup of cocoa. Soon, colorful yarn looped around Neal's needles. Stitch by stitch, the chill retreated. 2 freshmen scrimmaged free-throw drills with the pirate terrier dashing after rebounds, goggles fogging comically. Laughter ricocheted louder than the storm's howl. The power flickered, then died. Gasps rippled. Flashlights clicked on, casting jittery cones. Adrien hustled to the van, returning seconds later with Beacon's generator and a spool of fairy lights. Within minutes, warm bulbs draped the rafters, pulsing like a heartbeat. Someone began a guitar chord progression. Others joined in, the gym swelling with off-key carols. Rina captured it all. Silhouettes, smiles, light against dark. She uploaded a single image, Sora curled around Mrs. Neal, fairy lights haloing them, to the program's feed. By dawn, Number Beacon in the Storm trended citywide. Donations flooded faster than snowmelt. Outside, plows carved a path. Inside, hope had already cleared the road. Clear roads gleamed like river glass as the Beacon van rolled east toward Ridgeview Veterans Center, sunlight ricocheting off snowbanks in blinding shards. Inside, a quiet settled, a post-storm hush, broken only by the pirate terrier's tiny snores and the hum of Adrien's travel kettle brewing peppermint tea. Rina reviewed last night's viral post. Donation pledges had eclipsed the generator's cost tenfold. She smiled at Sora, who answered with a slow thump tail wag, as if acknowledging their expanding circle of light. Ridgeview's brick facade bore war-era scars, chipped cornices, a flagpole leaning like a tired sentinel. Administrator Marcus Hayes met them in the foyer, cane tapping syncopation with every step. "We've got spirits running on empty," he admitted, gesturing toward the rec hall. PT budgets were slashed again. They unpacked swiftly. Rina draped agility poles with camouflage netting to entice veterans who missed obstacle courses. Adrien set up a blood pressure station disguised as a mission check-in. Sora donned a kerchief patterned with tiny service ribbons, trotting beside Marcus as unofficial co-host. First through the doors was Sergeant DeLuca, wheelchair-bound after a recent surgery, skepticism etched deep. Sora eased forward, placed one paw gently on the footrest, and held his gaze. DeLuca's frown twitched, then softened. He accepted a beanbag from Rina, embroidered with the words, "Steady as she goes," and began grip squeezes timed to Sora's rhythmic breathing. In another corner, Staff Sergeant Rivera, living with PTSD, traced scent trail cards laid by the pirate terrier, each card infused with cedar and orange. The grounding exercise slowed Rivera's pulse visibly. Afterward, he requested extra cards for bunk time calm. Mid-session, Marcus joined Rina by the photo printer, watching glossy images spill out. A Marine laughing during tug-of-war with the Greyhound. A Navy vet guiding the Golden Retriever over mini-hurdles. "These snapshots," he said, voice thick, "prove we're more than case numbers." He pointed at one print, Sora beside DeLuca, both looking straight into the lens, that there is forward reconnaissance for hope. As sunset painted the window's corral, veterans pinned their photos on a wall, labeled "Missions Accomplished." Rina captured the collage, faces, paw prints, triumph layered like service ribbons. When the Beacon van pulled away, Marcus saluted at the gate. Sora returned the gesture with a single poised paw, promise exchanged in perfect silence. Spring advanced in bright, unstoppable strides as the Beacon van crossed state lines toward its final scheduled stop, Riverbend Children's Hospice. The low-slung building perched beside a willow-fringed lake, windows open to birdsong and the faint scent of lilacs. "Hardest station on the map," Adrien murmured, easing the van onto gravel. Rina squeezed his hand, camera cool against her hip. Sora rested a chin on the seat, amber eyes steady, ready. Inside, hallways shimmered with pastel murals and whispered conversations. Head nurse Elise greeted them, cardigan pockets bulging with tissues. "Laughter's in short supply," she confessed. "Families try to be brave, but, you know." Rina nodded, shoulders both heavy and determined. They set up in the solarium, floor mats softened with cloud print blankets, an origami station shaped like a paperboat harbor, and a wish capture booth where Rina's instant camera would gift take-home Polaroids. Volunteers looped gentle music, wind chimes, lullaby guitar, while therapy animals donned silken wings, stitched by a local craft guild. Sora's wings shimmered pale gold. The pirate terrier sported iridescent dragonfly gauze. First arrival: Jolene, age 6, wheelchair festooned with rainbow tape. She hesitated until Sora approached, lowering himself so her small fingers traced the outline of his wing. "Are you an angel dog?" she whispered. Sora licked her knuckles, sealing the answer. Rina snapped the moment, click, delivering a Polaroid that developed before Jolene's widening eyes. One by one, children arrived. Liam clutching a model spaceship, Ayana wearing a princess crown over a bald head. Dogs performed gentle tricks, collecting giggles like fireflies. At the origami harbor, Jolene folded a paper boat, scribbling "sail to tomorrow" on the hull before setting it afloat in a shallow basin. Elise blinked back tears. Near sunset, families gathered lakeside. Rina distributed biodegradable lanterns. Each child tucked their Polaroid inside, a luminous wish enclosed. Adrien read a short blessing about journeys, made lighter by paws and wings. Lanterns lifted, mirrored by willow shadows, rising until dusk swallowed their glow. Back in the van, Rina reviewed the final frames. Faces lit by lantern light, Sora reflected in lake glass, joy and sorrow braided into a single shining thread. "One more stop," she whispered, voice a tremor and a vow. Sora thumped his tail twice, the sound of steady answer echoing inside a night quiet with fragile dreams. Dawn the next day found the beacon van gliding back into the city where its journey had begun, tires humming a gentle bass line beneath soft rain. Rina leaned her forehead to the window, watching streetlights blur into amber smears. Sora sat upright beside her, gold wings folded now, but still radiant in the cab's dim glow. Adrien flicked on the indicator and eased toward Riverside Hospital's loading bay, full circle at last. Inside, familiar faces waited. Marcus from Ridgeview, Nurse Calhoun waving a knit scarf, Jolene's parents holding the paper boat marked "Sail to Tomorrow." The atrium buzzed with anticipation. Bunting spelled "Welcome Home, Beacon Crew" in paw print lettering. Milo, camera in hand for once, captured their entrance. Council member Ortega stepped forward to unveil a plaque mounted near the Hope Tree, an etched lighthouse, Sora's silhouette, and the inscription, "Let light find you." Applause rose, rolling through marble like distant thunder. Sora tapped the plaque with his nose, then trotted to the therapy corner where new recruits, 2 spaniels and a rescue bunny, waited for orientation. Rina wiped away proud tears she pretended were rain. Adrien guided her to the courtyard, now blooming with late spring tulips. "We logged 2,317 miles, he said, handing her a scrapbook compiled by patients they'd met along the route. Photographs, notes, sketches of paws and wings. On the last page, Jolene had drawn the beacon van, sailing toward a sunrise, captioned "Hope Keeps Driving." Rina closed the book, pulse a drumbeat of gratitude. "Where to next?" she whispered. Adrien grinned. "Wherever the map still has shadows." Sora barked once, as if volunteering directions, and nudged a volunteer application toward a cluster of waiting nurses. They re-entered the atrium together. Rina lifted her camera, framing Adrien, new recruits, and the plaque reflecting soft morning light. Click. A fresh shutter promise. As the image printed, Sora curled at their feet, tail sweeping arcs of contentment across polished stone, signaling that while journeys end, lighthouses stay lit, ready for the next traveler seeking safe harbor beneath unwavering beams and steadfast paws.